All right, so here we go, chapter 3. I'm going to take us on a few detours along the way because I want to start connecting some things from Daniel to the book of Revelation. And so, especially in the days we live in, this isn't our ordinary come together and have a Bible study time. This is a come together, have a Bible study, and prepare ourselves for the days we live in. These are unprecedented times, and for this reason, you know, I may cover some other territory besides the exact topic for tonight, which is Daniel chapter 3. It will all be connected to Daniel chapter 3, but I want us to cover a little bit more territory and make connections with the days in which we live. So the introductory note to Daniel 3 introduces the third death decree. Now, before we started this Daniel study, I never really counted the death decrees, and maybe some of you had, but I had not. So even just in that first sentence, we've already learned something about the book of Daniel. Now, this death decree involves Daniel's 3 friends. They refused to bow down and worship an image set up by King Nebuchadnezzar, who is a man, in direct defiance of Yahweh's plan. Even though it looked like their death was imminent, their response to King Nebuchadnezzar introduced the true deliverer to all the people on the plain of Dura that day, and for all that read Yahweh's word today. So his word is living. We serve a living Elohim. He is the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He is the Elohim of the living, not the dead. And we are so blessed to have his word, and his word is living. And all that we read in his word about Daniel speaks to all of us and those around us. And we are also to set that example in these end of days, because we know and have the hope that is within us, his Ruach HaKodesh. And there's so many people that do not have that. So at the end of time, Yah's people will also face a death decree over the issue of worship. And that's what I'm going to bring in extra tonight. Once again, the glory of the deliverer will be revealed. So I want us to see how Daniel applies to us so very much today, because we, like Daniel and his friends, we presently are in the same position. We are in exile, and we are in Babylon. Sometimes we refer to it as being in Egypt. Sometimes we could say we are in Mystery Babylon. But the key point is that this is not our home. Once you are a believer, once you receive Yahusha HaMashiach, your citizenship is in heaven. We are royal ambassadors on this earth. We live in the world, but we're not of the world. So that was the same predicament Daniel and his friends found themselves in. And just like his friends were asked to bow down and worship the image of the beast, or be issued a death decree, being thrown into the fiery furnace, so too, in the end of days, people are going to be asked to bow down and worship the image of the beast. So Yahusha told us, in this world we will have tribulation, but be of good cheer, for Yahusha has overcome this world. So praise Yah. He is the way, the truth, and the life. So just in the first verse, we're going to see Nebuchadnezzar's golden counterfeit image. And it took place approximately 579 BC. So verse 1 says, Nebuchadnezzar, the sovereign or the king, made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and its width 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babel. So 60 cubits high equates to about 90 feet high, and 6 cubits wide equate to about 9 cubits wide for our perspective. So in Daniel 2, we know King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream of an image that was composed of various metals. That's what we studied. And in Daniel 3, just tonight, we are going to see his construction of an image that is made of gold, falsely symbolizing that the Babylonian kingdom would be glorious and stand forever. Why? Because he made it of complete gold. And this was in direct defiance of the divine interpretation given by Daniel in the previous chapter, albeit having occurred approximately 19 years prior. So some of the commentaries say that there's a 19-year gap between chapter 2 and chapter 3. So Threescore, meaning 60, the number which the Babylonian religious system was founded on. Anu, the leading Babylonian god, was also assigned the number 60. So that was an interesting connection that the Daniel book brought out as well. And that's a picture of Anu to your right, and looks very similar to the statue that we read about in chapter 2. In Revelation, jumping to the end, in Revelation chapter 9, verse 20, which is cross-referenced in our studies, it says, and the rest of mankind who were not killed by these plagues did not repent of the works of their hands, that they should not worship the demons and idols of gold and of silver and of brass and of stone and of wood, which are neither able to see nor to hear nor to walk. So to the very end, there will be people that are worshiping Satan and demons and idols and all of these things. Their hearts will be so hardened, they will not repent. They will snub their nose at the Most High Elohim. Also in Revelation 13, we're going to review actually Revelation 13 in its entirety, but let's just look at verse 14. It says, and he leads astray those dwelling on the earth because of those signs which he was given to do before the beast, saying to those dwelling on the earth to make an image to the beast, who was wounded by the sword yet lived. So there's going to be an edict to make an image to the beast in the end of days. And we can clearly see the parallels between Nebuchadnezzar and him making an image. Now, honestly, we don't know what that image looked like that Nebuchadnezzar made. Was it Anu? Maybe it was the god Anu. Maybe it was an obelisk. Who knows? But it was a golden image, and we know the height and we know the width. And in the end of days, what will the image look like? It's hard to say, but the parallel is unmistakable, because what's concealed in Daniel, Yahusha wants to have revealed to us in the book of Revelation, so we will know and prepare for the end of days. So let's look a little bit at Revelation 13. Now, in our studies on Shabbat, we've been looking at the book of Revelation, those that follow the T4 sessions. And next Shabbat, we're going to be in chapter 12. So this is timely that we take a sneak peek at Revelation 13. And I also want to prepare us for the beast, the visions that Daniel will see in Daniel chapter 7. So I want us to stay very connected to Daniel and the days in which we live. So the first beast, would someone like to read Revelation 13:1 through 13:10?
I can, Libby.
Thank you.
Revelation 13:1, and I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads names of blasphemy. And the beast I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as having been slain to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the earth marveled after the beast. And they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? Who is able to fight with him?" And he was given a mouth, speaking great matters and blasphemies, and he was given authority to do so 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemies against Elohim, to blaspheme his name and his tent and those dwelling in the heaven. And it was given to him to fight with the set-apart ones and to overcome them. And authority was given to him over every tribe and tongue and nation. And all those dwelling on the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life of the slain Lamb from the foundation of the world shall worship him. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. He who brings into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword has to be killed with the sword. Here is the endurance of the belief of the set-apart ones.
Okay, so here is an example in verse 8 that said, "And all those dwelling on the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life of the slain Lamb from the foundation of the world shall worship him." So not all worship this beast. And at the very beginning in Revelation 13:1, just know in Revelation 13, there's 2 beasts. So think about Revelation 13 as having 2 parts, like 13a and 13b. So the first beast that was just read about in verse 1, "And I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast coming up," where? Coming up out of the sea, "having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads names of blasphemy." So the sea represents nations, peoples, and tongues, peoples. And so these beasts, however, are very similar to what Daniel sees in a night vision in chapter 7. So I'm just briefly touching on this because I want us to get prepared to see how Daniel is so tightly connected to Revelation. And so we see the creatures described that we will read very soon when we get to Daniel chapter 7. And at the bottom of this screen, it says, in Daniel 7, Daniel has a night vision of 4 diverse beasts rising from the sea. So these 2 rose from the sea. In Revelation 13, we will see a conglomeration of these 4 beasts. But what is missing in this picture? We will see when Daniel sees the visions of the 4 beasts, they're not put together like a conglomeration like we're seeing on the screen right now. But he sees a lion and he sees it has wings. But in this conglomeration picture, the wings have been cut off. You don't see the wings. So just make a mental note of that. And this conglomerate beast will be given power by the dragon. The dragon is Satan in the end of days. So like Nebuchadnezzar, this conglomeration beast, they thirst for power, they're full of pride, and they want to usurp worship. And all of these things will drive them to make an image to the beast. So I called this beast 1 of Revelation 13. Now the second beast, if someone would read that, verses 11 through 18, please.
I'll read it.
Okay.
Rev 13:11. And I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and spoke like a dragon. And he exercises all authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. 13:13. And he does great signs, so that even makes fire come down from the heaven on the earth before men. And he leads astray those dwelling on the earth because of those signs which he was given to do before the beast, saying to those dwelling on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword, yet lived. And there was given to him to give spirit to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause to be killed as many as would not worship the image of the beast. And he causes all, both small and great, and rich and poor, and free and slave, to be given a mark upon their right hand or upon their foreheads, and that no one should be able to buy or sell except he that has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is the wisdom. He who has understanding, let him calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Okay, so the question is, who is he in Revelation 13b, the second beast? It said in verse 14, and he leads astray those dwelling on the earth. I mean, there are going to be numerous people led astray on the earth in the end of days. Have we not already seen that? It's scary. It really is scary, the depth of deception. And we've studied already that our number one enemy is deception. So he leads astray those dwelling on the earth because of those signs which he was given to do before the beast, saying to those dwelling on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword yet lived. And then in verse 15, and there was given to him to give spirit to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause to be killed as many as would not worship the image of the beast. So this is AI and so much more going on with this beast. It's almost looks like it's given life. So artificial intelligence is going to be used, and so much other technology that so many will be deceived. And
they're already doing that.
Yes.
Putting chips in your hand and stuff like that.
Yes. And this is going to be the death decree, just like we're going to be studying in Daniel tonight, that here again in the end of times that beast causes to be killed as many as would not worship the image of the beast. So do we think Daniel is pretty important to study for such a time as this? Absolutely. Do we need to be encouraged by the strength and wisdom and faith in Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah? Absolutely. Because we too may be in that very same circumstance. In Daniel 7:20 it reads, "And concerning the 10 horns that were on its head, and of the other horn that came up, before which 3 fell, this horn which had eyes and a mouth which spoke great words, whose appearance was greater than his fellows, I was looking, and this horn was fighting against the set apart ones and was prevailing against them." So here in Revelation 13, for a time, the beast does prevail against the set apart ones. And in Daniel 7:20 and 21, it also states that this little horn will prevail against the set apart ones. So what Daniel was shown is being revealed in Revelation, the book of Revelation, and the 4 beasts especially have a huge focus in Revelation 13. So, yes.
That where you had the last where they were talking about the calculating the number.
Yes.
Okay, wait a minute. It's he who understands, let him calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Well, when you add those together, 666, it brings it up to 18, which is bondage. And the number 60 means pride. So just interjection.
Oh, that's great. Yes. Yes.
And the other thing here, when he talks about horn, I remember horn means power. So when you look at horn, power.
Absolutely. Yes. And everything in Yah's word has meaning. Every jot and tittle, every number. There will be so many things that we will learn in his presence that will come to life in his word. His word is so multi-dimensional, layer upon layer. And though we have learned so much, we're probably just scratching the surface. So the next slides is just something I've put together. I'm not saying, I tried to get some images that are close just to give us a visual. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm just trying to give us an example of chapter 13. So look at chapter 13 as 13a, beast 1 comes out of the sea. And then the second half of chapter 13 in Revelation, I call it B. And that's the beast that comes out of the earth. So in essence, it's a conglomeration of political rule and a conglomeration of a religious combination. And then when we get to Revelation 17, it's almost like it's all even building up even more into a even bigger conglomeration of a beast. And we're going to see more players in Revelation 17. We're going to see the whore riding the beast. And we're also just looking at some of these verses in 17, not reading all of them, but 17 verse 9, here is the mind having wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. So there's been lots of speculation as to what these 7 mountains are. We know in the present day Israel area, there's 7 mountains. We know in Rome, there's 7 mountains. But another possibility is that the 7 mountains are the 7 continents, because this is a global cabal. And in Revelation 7:12, and the 10 horns which you saw are 10 sovereigns or 10 kings, like you were speaking of, Sharon. The horns represent power, kings, who have not yet received a reign, but receive authority as sovereigns with the beast for 1 hour. So we're going to see these 10 horns, which are 10 kings who have not yet received a reign, but receive authority. So some tie that into some possible Islamic leadership. That's just one possibility. And then in Revelation 17:18 tells us who the woman is. And the woman whom you saw is that great city. Now, the key is to identify what great city, having sovereignty over the sovereigns of the earth. We have a clue in Revelation 11 to your right. In Revelation 11:7 and 8, it says, and when they have ended their witness, this is talking about the 2 witnesses, because the 2 witnesses witnessed for 3.5 years, the beast coming up out of the pit. So there's another beast that comes out of the pit of the deep, shall fight against them and overcome them and kill them. And their dead bodies lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Mitzrayim, or Egypt, where also our master was impaled. So there's your identification of the great city. The great city is Jerusalem. It's defined there. So Mystery Babylon, we are studying right now how Judah was exiled to Babylon and did servitude for 70 years. So Judah was exiled to Babylon. That's where the Babylonian Talmud comes from. They are sent back to Jerusalem, and with them they bring the Babylonian Talmud and much more. They bring back the Babylonian calendar as well. And so we have this picture of Judah that had been exiled to Babylon. We have this picture of Israel that had been exiled to Assyria and then dispersed all over the world. And why? Why were they exiled? And if you, please mute if you haven't muted already. So why were they exiled? They were exiled because they were whores. They went after other gods. They were not faithful to the one true Elohim. They were harlots. And actually Israel was divorced. So Mystery Babylon, we know, and the great city, if it does turn out to be the case being Jerusalem, I'm not trying to sway anyone's opinions. I'm just trying to validate how I've come to that conclusion. That great city is going to be the city where they are looking at building a 3rd temple. They are also looking at, and we know that the Sanhedrin were reformed in 2004, the same council that condemned Yahusha and accused him of blasphemy. That same council has been reformed since 2004. Hello. What did Yahusha tell us? If they hated me, they will hate you. And he has told us, don't worry when they drag you before their court system about what to say, because in that very hour, the Ruach HaKodesh will speak for you. So we have this mystery Babylon, this great city, which I see as defined in Revelation 11:8, where also our master was impaled, to me identifies that as Jerusalem. We know it began in Jerusalem, and we know it will end in Jerusalem. Not that it's just in Jerusalem, it's just the command center, if you will, because the anti-Messiah, the abomination of desolation that may be set up in that pagan third temple, will rule from that region the whole world. So that's just a possibility. But the main takeaway, I want us to start connecting the beast that we will soon be studying in Daniel, to bring it to life and connect to Revelation. So let's proceed on to verse 2 through 3, if someone would read those verses, please. And this is King Nebuchadnezzar demands patriotism. Oh man, yes, patriotism. All these countries demand patriotism. And so, because they want your allegiance to their country. So let's go ahead and read verse 2 and 3.
I'll read it.
And sovereign.
Go ahead.
Oh, I thought somebody else was going to read.
That's okay.
And sovereign Nebuchadnezzar sent word to gather together the viceroys, the nobles, and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces, to come to the dedication of the image which sovereign Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then the viceroys, the nobles, and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces gathered together for the dedication of the image that sovereign Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up.
Okay, so so they gathered all these leaders, all the governors. You know, just recently, President Trump gathered all the governors of all 50 states and had a meeting in Washington, D.C. And, you know, I was just thinking about, well, and have we recently seen an image set up? Have we recently seen corona, meaning crown? Kind of reminds me of that picture on the Economist, was the 2017 magazine, where it appears that there's some type of crown on that globe, if you will. There is some parallels happening. Is that, I'm not saying that that's the image that's going to be set up to the beast, but it might be one of the smaller images and a trial run to focus their attention on this global focus on this coronavirus, and that has gotten the whole world's attention, and everyone's following along with all the dictates of how to deal with this coronavirus. Matthew 7:13 and 14 reminds us, enter in through the narrow gate, because the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction. And there are many who enter in through it, because the gate is narrow and the way is hard pressed, which leads to life. And there are few who find it. And Revelation 13:3 and Revelation 13:8 we already looked at, but let's just recap them. And I saw one of his heads as having been slain to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the earth marveled after the beast. Verse 8, and all those dwelling on the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life of the slain Lamb from the foundation of the world shall worship him. Okay, would someone like to read verse 4 through 7? The King Nebuchadnezzar demands worship.
I'll read it.
Thank you.
Then a herald loudly proclaimed, "To you it is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that as soon as you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, the pipes, and all kinds of instruments, you shall fall down and do obeisance to the gold image that the sovereign Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down and do obeisance is immediately thrown into the midst of the burning furnace of fire." So as soon as all the people heard the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, and all kinds of instruments, all the people, nations, and languages fell down and did obeisance to the golden image that sovereign Nebuchadnezzar had set up.
Okay. So there was this call, and through the instruments, everyone's attention would be had, and then they would bow down and worship. And many religions do that today. They send out a call and they all worship at the same time. So verses 4 through 7 there, Yahweh's people never obey man's decrees over Yahweh's laws. Yes, we do obey laws of the land. However, when they conflict with the word of Yahweh, then that's where we draw the line. And we will see the same thing take place in chapter 6 of Daniel, when Daniel continues to worship the one true living Elohim and not Nebuchadnezzar. King Cyrus. It was King Cyrus at that time. So he too stands firm. And also, I put a note there after verse 5 to look on page 49 of your book. In that notes section, it says Daniel 3, verse 1 mentions 60 cubits, 60, and 6 cubits, 6 for image dimensions. Verses 5, 10, and 15 list 6 instruments. Again, 3 6s can be found linked to literal Babylon that set up an image for worship. This parallels characteristics of symbolic spiritual Babylon. In what chapter? In Revelation chapter 13, that will also set up an image for worship. Right now, events are being orchestrated in the world for a death decree that will be enforced in the future on those who will not conform to the demands of a counterfeit religion with the number 666. So now we see that Daniel's friends refused to worship a false god. If someone would read those verses 8 through 10, please. 8. Thereupon, at that time, certain Kasdim came forward and accused the Yehudim. They spoke and said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "O king, live forever. You, O sovereign, or O king, have made a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, the pipes, and all kinds of instruments shall fall down and do obeisance to the gold image. So here we have certain Kasdim, some people that lived in Babylon, came forward and accused the Yehudim, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah of not bowing down. So who is the accuser of the brethren? Who is known as the accuser of the brethren?
Satan.
That's right, Satan. And Satan can work through people's flesh to bring about his will. Remember when Peter spoke to Yahusha, and Yahusha was telling the apostles that he would be crucified, and Peter said, "No, that can't be." And just paraphrasing, and Yahusha looked at Peter and he said, "Get behind me, Satan." He wasn't talking to Peter. He was talking to Satan that was influencing the thoughts of Peter, and Peter listened to those thoughts. And so Yahusha knew who was influencing Peter, because there's three voices we listen to or that we can listen to. And that's why we always have to take our thoughts captive. And we went over this in the introductory parts of Daniel. The one we should listen to and follow are the words of Yahusha and all the scripture in his holy word. The second entity that can influence our thoughts are Satan. In the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve hid from Yahweh, and Yahweh said, "Where are you?" And now Yahweh knew where they were, and they said, "Well, we hid, for we were naked." And he said, "Who told you you were naked?" He knew who told them, but he wanted them to realize that who they listened to. And of course, I was just paraphrasing that. And thirdly, the third voice that we can choose to listen to is the voice of our own flesh, doing things our own way. So that is why we are to always work to having the mind of Yahusha and carrying out the will of the Father, and having our emotions portray the fruit of the Spirit. That's our ultimate goal of being sound, spiritually minded, not double-minded, not unstable in all of our ways, not fleshly minded, but spiritually minded. So these Kasdims rose up and accused Daniel's three friends, and they go to the king and verify the decree like they didn't know the decree. So we see
Libby,
how,
I see
yes.
that. I see that now, even with the point that the people are wearing masks because they're bowing down to the image, which is the political system, the New World Order system, and they're bowing down by following the command to do so.
Yes.
Mainly, you can't buy or sell eventually, but they're the same thing. Nothing new under the sun.
Yes, yes. This image of this coronavirus has dictated everyone, because we have set this image of this coronavirus that they made movies about back in 2003. Now, because of this, you are to wear a mask. So yes, that's an example. That's them testing the waters to see what kind of response they will get. And sadly, they've gotten a real good response. And the propaganda coming out of the TVs are just off the chart with all these programming commercials and so forth.
So they're bowing down to their knees to do this, and then they're going to lie down and receive the shot that is the mark, and there's like being branded.
Yes, yes. So we have to be very cautious about all of these things and set the examples for others. The enemy is always trying to get right up there by the rulers and the kings and so forth. And we've seen plenty of those on the front and center stage of just this current event. But it also took place in Esther. In Esther 3:1 and 2, we read, after these events, sovereign Ahasuerus promoted Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, and exalted him and seated him higher than all the princes with him. And all the sovereign's servants who were in the sovereign's gate bowed and did obeisance to Haman, for so the sovereign had commanded concerning him. But Mordecai would not bow or do obeisance. And then in Hosea 7:3, with their evil they make a sovereign glad, and rulers with their lies. So there's a lot of witchcraft and sorcery taking place as well, because there will be these magical signs that they will do and exploits that they will do and create to make people think that they are the powerful ones, and they will deceive many. Just like when Moses and Aaron went before Pharaoh and they did all the turning the Aaron's rod into a snake, and then the magicians would do similar feats. Well, the same thing will happen in the end of days. Evil targets the faithful, right? Because Satan, Satan, doesn't throw stones at dead birds. If you are doing Yahweh's work, you're going to get stones from Satan. And so evil targets the faithful. The battle is between good and evil. That's it. There's two sides. There's good and evil. And Esau and Jacob is that comparison of good and evil, if you will, the two nations warring in the womb of Rebekah. So the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, and the enemy's color is red, blood red. Anytime you see the killing and shedding of blood, it is connected to the evil one, those that have chosen to follow evil and not the one true living Elohim. So we will see that after 70 years of servitude, many of those that were exiled to from Judea had assimilated into the Babylonian culture. We have been born and raised in the Babylonian culture, if you will. We have been born and raised in Egypt. We have been ingrained and programmed and brainwashed into believing all the things about our particular culture that we were raised in. But in the kingdom of Yahweh, everything changes. We go by Yahweh's feast days. We worship on Yahweh's Shabbat. We follow Yahweh's commands. And so we come out of the worldly cultures, and we come out of the man-made religions, and we follow him and not the worldly systems. So many chose not to return. Many chose not to be sure to mute. Be sure to mute. Many chose not to return to build the temple, the wall, and the city of Jerusalem. Only a remnant returned from Babylon. Those that did not return chose not to come out, but to fit in. They just wanted to continue their life. They had built their houses and they were starting to raise families, and they just decided, well, we'll just stay here. And Chuck Missler shared on one of his teachings that only about 50,000 returned. I was pretty shocked by that number, how low it was, but that's what his research has shown him. So a quote from the book said, "The character of a person at the end of time will be a perfect reflection of the character of the master he or she has chosen throughout life." So let's go on to read Daniel 3:11 and 3:12 first. Okay.
Daniel 3:11.
And 12.
Whoever does not fall down and do obeisance is thrown into the midst of a burning furnace of fire. There are certain Yehudim whom you have set over the work of the province of Babel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abəděř-Neɡo. These men, O sovereign, pay no heed to you. They do not serve your Elohim, and they are not doing obeisance to the gold image which you have set up.
Okay, so they turn Shadrach, Meshach, and Abəděř-Neɡo in. So out of the large multitude that were gathered to this event of dedication to the image, only a remnant of 3 would not bow down and worship to the image, recorded on page 50. So please go ahead and read when King Nebuchadnezzar gets in a rage.
Then Nebuchadnezzar, in rage and wrath, gave orders to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abəděř-Neɡo. Then they brought these men before the sovereign. Nebuchadnezzar spoke and said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abəděř-Neɡo, that you do not serve my Elohim, and you do not do obeisance to the gold image which I have set up? Now if you are ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, the pipes, and all kinds of instruments, and you fall down and do obeisance to the image which I have made, good. But if you do not do obeisance, you are immediately thrown into the midst of a burning furnace of fire. And who is the Elah who does deliver you from my hands?"
Okay, so Nebuchadnezzar was full of rage and wrath. He was definitely manifesting being influenced by Satan himself, because anyone that leans toward killing of another human being is being inspired by Satan. And in Revelation 18:4, it says, "And I heard another voice from the heavens saying, 'Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues.'" So that's not a small thing to synchronize with the world. When his word says, "You best come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues," a very serious thing to synchronize with the world. And that last sentence, "And who is the Elah who does deliver you from my hands?" Earthly rulers challenged the Creator Yah. We saw that in Exodus 5 verse 2. And Pharaoh said, "Who is Yahuwah that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I do not know Yahweh, nor am I going to let Israel go. So there will be a snubbing of people's noses at the one true living Elohim. And we've seen that over and over again with all these Supreme Court decisions that have been passed down, as well as various state decisions against taking life and infanticide and all these things, and lighting up the, what's the name of that building in New York? I always forget it.
I think it's the Freedom Tower.
No, the Empire State Building?
Yeah,
Empire
the
State Building.
Yeah, the Empire State
I
Building that
I
they
always get it wrong.
that they light up, they lit up with pink and stuff. It was just really in the face of Yahweh. So to this day, nothing new is under the sun. Okay, so let's continue to read about Daniel's companions prove they are loyal to Yahweh alone in verses 16 through 19.
Do you want me to read it, Libby?
Yeah, that'd be great, Christine.
Okay. 16 through 19.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, there is no need to answer you in this matter. If it be so, our Elohim, who we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your Elohim, nor worship the golden image that you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, full of fury, and the expression on his face was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and therefore he spoke and commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was normally heated.
So he was furious. He was full of wrath, and he was probably almost reaching the verge of being possessed. I mean, he was in full-blown rage. And we know by the covenant commands in Exodus 20 verse 3 through verse 5, it says, we are to have no other mighty ones against my face. You do not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of that which is in the heavens above, or which is in the earth beneath, or which is in the waters under the earth. You do not bow down to them, nor serve them. For I, Yahweh, your Elohim, am a jealous El, visiting the crookedness of the fathers on the children to the 3rd and 4th generations of those who hate me. So we are not to have any other mighty ones against Yahweh's face. And Satan's kingdom is constantly making images to be worshipped and to be bowed down to. In Matthew 10:19 through 22, but when they deliver you up, do not worry about how or what you should speak, for it shall be given to you in that hour what you shall speak. For it is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father speaking in you. And brother shall deliver up brother to death, and a father his child. And children shall rise up against parents, and shall put them to death. And you shall be hated by all for my name's sake, but he who shall have endured to the end shall be saved. So in the end of days, there are going to be some international court systems. And even though many people do not think the Noahide laws carry much weight, I differ on that understanding, because they are in full-blown measure. They have been signed into U.S. Public Law 102.14 in the U.S. They have been signed off as, and it was concealed in the resolution Education Day. It's been signed off from every president since Jimmy Carter. There's been 7 presidents that have signed off. It's been the 40th year anniversary in the year 2018. They have, all 50 states in the US have adopted this Education Day that nestles in the Noahide Laws. They named it the Noahide Laws. That makes it sound like they're biblical. Some even sound like the 10 Commandments. However, when you read all the subcategories of these Noahide 7 laws, they go into so many categories and subcategories that a person can be declared condemned to death by beheading for even saying the name Jesus or Yahusha or Yahweh, and only by one witness. We know that right offhand is not biblical, because his word always says that no one can be condemned to death with one witness. There are yeshivas set up worldwide. And so the Sanhedrin that are made mostly of the Chabad Lubavitch sect, not all secular Jews am I speaking of, by no means, because this is a particular sect that say they are Jews and are not. These are the ones that Yahusha declared as being the synagogue of Satan. These are the ones that Yahusha declared as being a brood of vipers. These are the ones that condemned Yahusha HaMashiach to death. And so this is rising up again in these end of days. And this is something to be mindful of, because it's the Sanhedrin's goal and their desire to become and take the place of the United Nations. And where might they rule from? Well, more than likely from Jerusalem. So there's been a lot of research and done on this. Senator Dannemeyer's full testimony, he was there when that U.S. Public Law 102.14 was snuck in. He tells the truth about how it was snuck in on my YouTube channel, the LibbyTube. On the 4th part of the Noahide Laws, I read Senator Dannemeyer's testament of what happened. I believe he died in 2018, but what a precious document to have, that we honestly had a congressman that was willing to tell the truth, the ugly truth of what took place. Now, you can say that those Noahide laws mean nothing, but what they are pushing is that they want Christians to become Noahides. They say, keep the 7 and you go to heaven. I'm sorry, that's blasphemous. That is false doctrine, and that is from the enemy. And if someone thinks that you can keep the 7 Noahide laws and go to heaven, and if people think that's okay to say that, they are badly mistaken. So the facts are the facts, and we have to be mindful of what's taking place in our present day. So I've done my research. I've come to my conclusion. in my sanctification walk. I'm not trying to influence anyone else, but I am trying to encourage people to do their own homework. I do know that Yana and Steve.
Stephen Noon, yeah.
Yeah, Israeli News Live, that's what it is, Israeli News Live. They've done a lot of research on this topic as well.
Libby, can I, something I saw today when I was looking at that Noahide, I was writing that down, the same thing as I was going through it. Noahide. What else other people had that last "ite" in their names? It's like what they've done is they put Noahide is to proclaim that this is who's coming after you. Ites are usually seed of Satan, and so what they've done is they're flip-flopping what Yah has. How do you say that? They're flip-flopping the law back on us.
Right, and they're twisting Yah's word, and they're going by the Babylonian Talmud, and they're calling the Babylonian Talmud the Torah, and that is not true either. So the Babylonian Talmud came from the time period of when they were in Babylon. So be mindful of that, do your research on that, because there's several tentacles. It's just not only the Noahide laws. There's several avenues of attack toward believers in the end of days. That's just one of many, but that is one to most definitely be watching, especially since the President of the United States, his daughter, and her husband are both of the Chabad-Lubavitch sect. And so these are some unusual times. Well,
even our president had to convert to be a Jew too, because otherwise they couldn't marry in. They could not marry into that. So her father had to become one of the Jews too. That sect you're talking about. But at first, when he came in, he claimed to be a Christian, and then flipped over when his daughter would have had, she wouldn't be able to marry him unless her parents were Jewish.
A lot of things to take into consideration. I can't, verify that for sure, but I have also heard that. It's concerning when a president of one nation has his image on a temple coin in a different nation, and when those relationships become that close, and knowing that there are about 90 congressmen that have dual citizenship between the U.S. and Israel, I'm sorry, but his word says, who can serve two masters? You cannot do that. I mean, if you're dual citizenship, who are you going to be faithful to? And if you're a dual citizen, well, that's fine, but what are you doing in leadership of a country? So, I mean, these are in our face, and we can ignore them and just say, oh, no, there's nothing to that. Well, I kind of beg to differ on that. So,
Libby?
Yeah.
Libby? Some of the participants are just now hearing about the Noahide laws for the first time. Can you, in a little condense, let them know what it is in a little nutshell?
Yes. The Noahide laws are 7 laws that sound very similar to 7 of the 10 commandments, if you will. And they are being pushed as those are the laws that the whole world should follow. The Noahide laws are not listed in 7 consecutive places in his word. They come from the Babylonian Talmud. Now, why should we follow 7 Noahide laws from the Babylonian Talmud? Why wouldn't we just follow the 10 commandments of Yahweh? So these Noahide laws is their deceptive way to fool all the believers globally to come together and let's just all agree to get along. Let's just all agree that we all need to follow these 7 Noahide laws that are written in their Talmud, Babylonian Talmud. But the deception is that there are several subcategories, and any person can be accused by one person of breaking a Babylonian Talmudic Noahide law and could suffer death by decapitation or some other way. So these Noahide laws were embedded into the Education Day resolution. Education Day is celebrated in the U.S. every year. And it was not, it started as a resolution, but in 1992 or 91, George Bush Sr. signed it into U.S. Public Law 102-14, and Congress snuck it in after they had closed the session and sent most people home. So they have 2 sets of laws. If they say they are Jews and are not, and they sometimes may verify this through blood DNA test, those tests, I'm sorry. Okay.
And those laws are made for each person different. Like the Gentiles have the way they're going to judge you on one way, and then they're going to judge the Jews another way. So
Yes.
it's like So it's like
it's a double standard.
Yep.
It's a double standard, and so. Yes, and you would not be able to worship. Would you put them in their crate, baby? Just put them in their crate. You know, you can tell when you're speaking on a topic that is important that everything breaks loose. So thanks for bearing with me on that. So under the Noahide laws, believers would not be able to worship on Shabbat. They would need to worship like on a Sunday. And there are 2 different standards. And in the Babylonian Talmud, many people aren't even, they're looked at as more like cattle rather than human beings. So that's in a nutshell the Noahide laws. They are man-driven laws put out by those that say they are Jews and are not. They go to the Oval Office. They have this ritual signing with the president every year, I believe, and take their photo ops. So that's no small thing to be able to go into the Oval Office and have declarations signed. That connection, that imagery of that connection between the U.S. and Israel is a powerful image. And so there's a lot more that can be said on that, but I have a 4-part series on my YouTube channel, the LibbyTube. Right now, my YouTube channel is frozen. I cannot upload to it, haven't been able to upload to it. I have no strikes against my channel, but they have put a copyright flag on it, which mandates me to take a test for what? I don't really want to take a copyright test because I haven't committed any copyright infringements. So it's just another way to censor and limit the voice of truth. So we're going to see more and more of that. So that's the Noahide laws. There are 7 laws. You read them, they sound just like 7 closely related to the 10 commandments, but they are not, because they come from a different book and they have subcategories that could cost us our very lives. And their court systems will be these court systems that people are brought in front of. And those, I believe, are the court systems that Yahusha tells us not to worry about what we should say, because in that very hour, the Ruach HaKodesh will let us know how to answer. So does that help?
Yes, that helps.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So in Acts 20, verse 24 through 31, this is when Paul is talking, I believe, to the Ephesians, I believe. It says, "But I do not count my life of any value to me, that I might accomplish my mission with joy and the service which I received from the Master Yahusha, to bear witness to the good news of the favor of Elohim. And now see, I know that you all, among whom I went about proclaiming the reign of Elohim, shall see my face no more. Therefore I witness to you this day that I am clear from the blood of all. For I kept not back from declaring to you all the counsel of Elohim. Therefore take heed to yourselves and to all the flock among which the set-apart Spirit has made you overseers, to shepherd the assembly of Elohim, which he has purchased with his own blood. For I know this, that after my departure, savage wolves shall come in among you, not sparing the flock. Also, from among yourselves men shall arise, speaking distorted teachings, to draw away the taught ones after themselves. Therefore watch, remembering that for 3 years, night and day, I did not cease to warn each one with tears. And at this very time period, people are leaving the true faith and going to Noahide schools and becoming Noahides. And they are leaving their first love. So Revelation 13:15, and there was given to him to give spirit to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause to be killed as many as would not worship the image of the beast. And in Revelation 14:6 and 7, and I saw another messenger flying in mid-heaven, holding the everlasting good news to announce to those dwelling on the earth, even to every nation and tribe and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, fear Elohim and give esteem to him, because the hour of his judgment has come. And worship him who made the heaven and the earth and sea and fountains of water. So Daniel's friends are thrown into a fiery furnace. It's heated up 7 times hotter. In verse 20 and 21, and he commanded some of the strongest men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the burning furnace of fire. So these men were bound in their coats, their trousers, and their turbans, and their other garments, and were thrown into the midst of the burning furnace of fire. So in verse 20 and 21, we have the 3rd death decree. So we often see this pattern of overkill when the enemy comes against Yahweh's anointed. we see here the furnace is heated 7 times hotter. We see the strongest of men summoned to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These guys are geeks, if you will. They are men of study, not physical strength. So you see that Nebuchadnezzar, he was really worried about the Elohim they served. He was shocked that they would rather be thrown into the furnace. He was enraged. He didn't want anything to go wrong because then he would have egg on his face. So we have seen in the past, in Acts chapter 16, we have seen Paul and Silas beaten with rods because of mob rule and put into prison. But not only were they put into prison, they are put in the inner prison. And not only are they put in the inner prison, they have their feet fastened in stocks. And with all of that, Yahweh breaks them out. We also have the example of Yahusha. Yahusha spoke to the crowds in Matthew 26, and he said to them, have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs to arrest me? Daily I sat with you, teaching in the set apart place, and you did not seize me. So you see, it is the enemy working behind man's flesh that is well aware of the inner power and authority of believers in Yahweh. For we have the Ruach HaKodesh living in us. And it is this Baal spirit that compels them to exorbitant measures against believers. So we are still seeing this Baal spirit dictating these exorbitant measures, coming to the White House every year to make sure this resolution that is U.S. Public Law 102.14 is signed off on. It is not only in the U.S., it's in other countries as well. So they're trying to make this global, part of a global rule. And I go into a lot of that too in session 4 of the Noahide Laws. So this same spirit we are up against in the end of days. And we see this death decree. The third death decree is in your books on page 52. And this is just another graphic I put together showing the third death decree. After they would not bow down and worship the golden image, you see Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego still standing, even facing imminent death by being thrown into the fiery furnace. But we see Yahweh deliver them. So far in chapter 1, we saw the first decree, death decree, with when they chose to eat clean food instead of unclean food. And at the end, they were fairer and fatter than the rest that ate the king's food. So that was when they feared the possible first death decree. And in chapter 2, we saw that the wise men that Nebuchadnezzar called in could not tell him his dream and could not tell him what the statue meant. However, Daniel goes back to his friends. They pray about it. Yahweh reveals the dream and the meaning, the interpretation. And so they, again, avoid that second death decree if they would not have been able to interpret the dream. Now, tonight, in the third chapter, they are faced with worshiping a golden image that is set up in Babylon. And Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah refuse to bow down to the golden image, and they choose rather to be thrown into the fiery furnace. And if Yahweh would save them, they knew he could. And if he didn't save them, then they were okay with that too. But they are delivered. So a question that Chuck Missler brought up in his Daniel study was, where was Daniel? You know, we're reading about the three, but where was Daniel? And he named his session on Daniel 3, Bow or Burn. There was a huge ego trip going on with building this statue and making it all gold and thinking that Babylon was going to last forever. They did use the music to call everyone to attention to, in unison, bow down to this idol. Daniel's three friends refused. The furnace was so hot, since it was heated up 7 times hotter, that the guards that were trying to build this fire and to throw the three companions of Daniel into the fire, they die. I mean, they couldn't even get near it. It was so hot. And only the bindings of Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah came off. Nothing else was touched, but they were loosed. And so the question was, where was Daniel? So Chuck Missler makes a few bullet points here. He said, well, is it because Daniel yielded to the king's challenge? He said, not likely. And then he said, well, was it because Daniel was exempted from accusation by his enemies? No, wrong again, not likely. And then Daniel, thirdly, had Daniel been removed from the situation? Was he on an errand for the king? So that's a strong possibility. And if he had been about the king's business and had been absent, then the rivals could have taken that opportunity to set up his three companions. And there is an Istanbul prism that lists the three companions of Daniel. And so this was something that Chuck Missler mentioned, and it said, according to Professor William Shea, a startling find for Babylon may record the actual names of Daniel's three friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So the Bible states in Daniel chapter 6, 6 through 7, now from among those of the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. To them, the chief of the eunuchs gave names. He gave Daniel the name Belshazzar, to Hananiah, Shadrach, to Mishael, Meshach, and to Azariah, Abəděnego. A 5-sided clay prism found in Babylon and now housed in the Istanbul Museum gives a list of men and their titles. 3 men listed on the prism have pronunciations which are very similar to the names of Daniel's 3 friends. Whether or not they are the actual men mentioned in the Bible is uncertain. So anyway, he connected that to the Istanbul prism. And he also connected it because Daniel wasn't there. He goes on to mention that, well, the church in Revelation isn't mentioned after Revelation 4:1. And that is because the traditional church belief is that the so-called church will be raptured in the pre-tribulation period and will not go through tribulation. And that's been the traditional church view. And, you know, presently many believe this, but nowadays we are seeing more and more that many also believe that is not the case, and so do I. And actually, I believe that there may be several catching aways, and therefore we may end up seeing that there may be somewhat of a pre-trib type catching away, or a mid-trib type catching away, because after the two witnesses, and after they are killed and lay in the street for 3.5 days, they are called up to heaven. Now, what heaven is not mentioned. Is it the first, second, or third? It's not stated, but what is stated is that they are called up. Well, that's a catching away. And in Revelation 12, when we get into Revelation 12, after the birth of the child is caught up to the throne room of Yahweh. So that is another catching away, the birthing of the one new man, the birthing of Israel. So you can see where there's several catching aways, if you will, and we know toward the end will be another harvest. So is it a possibility, as we continue to go through Daniel and Revelation, is it a possibility with the Moedim, with the spring harvest, with the harvest at Pentecost, and with the harvest in the fall of the olives and the grapes, is it possible that there are several harvest first fruits catching away, and each of those harvests have first fruits in them? So it's interesting that it may be that there are, throughout Revelation, depictions of catching aways. So that's just something to keep in mind as a possibility. And this little excerpt from Tom Stapleton, it says, "We are called to stand for Yahusha. Before the end of time, we will all be called to stand for our Elohim. It is important to note that Daniel was not present to counsel his friends when the 3 Hebrews were called to worship the image. They had developed their own personal daily relationship with their Elohim, which made them able to stand alone when all others bowed. Many times Christians rely on others, but the day will soon come when each individual must stand for Yahusha or bow to the image of the beast. Now is the time to develop our relationship with Elohim, because the time is coming when we will be severely tried and tested to reveal from what metal we are made. We see this in Yahusha's parable of the 5 wise and foolish virgins, which is a lesson on developing our relationship with God, Elohim, before it is too late. Yes, it's all about relationship. Maxie, did you have your hand up? You may be muted. I cannot hear you, but okay, we'll try
there. Now can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm reading a book called Solving the Mystery of Babylon the Great. And it shows what you've been talking about, how the Pharisees that Christ talked about came from Babylon and their Babylonian mysticism and so on. On chapter 27, it says in the 1800s, the Zionists, which are part of this group, financed a plan to, with the Jebusites in the Catholic Church, to change the theology of the of the Protestant churches. And they entered the seminaries, and they introduced the theology of rapture. They also introduced that, let's see, I've changed the position that Roman Catholic was not the Antichrist. And this all happened in 1800s, 1812. And one of the big suppliers and backers of the rapture was the Schofield Bible.
Mm-hmm.
So just very interesting to me. I just thought I bring that up.
Absolutely, absolutely. The enemy is within and without, and under their laws, it is okay to lie to the ones that they call goyim, and it is okay to even become pastors in these man-driven religion churches and deceive the masses. So there are definitely spies in the land, if you will. So as we go on to Daniel 3:22 through 26, it says, thereupon, because the sovereign's order was urgent and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound into the midst of the burning furnace of fire. So they were bound, okay? And they were thrown down into the midst of the burning furnace of fire. And then they see Yahusha, son of Elohim, was also in the furnace in verses 24 through 26.
Libby, you're not sharing your screen if you wanted to.
I'm not. I show screen sharing. Do y'all not see my screen?
I see it.
I see the screen.
I see the screen. I see your screen.
Okay, so it might be something with your iPad, Carol-Ann.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
That's okay. So verse 24 through 26, then sovereign Nebuchadnezzar was amazed and stood up in haste and spoke and said to his counselors, did we not throw 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said to the sovereign, certainly, O sovereign. He answered and said, look, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the son of Elohim. Then Nebuchadnezzar went near the mouth of the burning furnace of fire. He spoke and said, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, servants of the Most High Elohim, come out and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came from the midst of the fire. So in Psalm 33:18, we read, see, the eye of Yahweh is on those fearing him. That's us. That's us. See, the eye of Yahweh is on those fearing him, on those waiting for his loving commitment, to deliver their being from death and to keep them alive during scarcity of food. Psalm 91:3, for he delivers you from the snare of a trapper, from the destructive pestilence. He covers you with what? He covers you with his feathers. And under his what? And under his wings you take refuge. His truth is a shield and armor. You are not afraid of the dread by night, of the arrow that flies by day, of the pestilence that walks in darkness, of destruction that ravages at midday. 1,000 fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, but it does not come near you. Only with your eyes you look on and see the reward of the wrong ones. Because you have made Yahweh my refuge, the Most High, your dwelling place, no evil befalls you, and a plague does not come near your tent. For he commands his messengers concerning you to guard you in all your ways. Isaiah 43:1 and 2. But now, thus said Yahweh, your creator, O Jacob, and he who formed you, O Israel, do not fear. For I have redeemed you. I have called you by your name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I am with you, and through rivers, they do not overflow you. When you walk through fire, you are not scorched, and a flame does not burn you. So is it possible that when we face persecution, if anyone faces like a burning furnace or a beheading, is it possible that Yahweh makes it to where his people don't even experience that? Based on that scripture right there, it seems to be a possibility. So we see Daniel's friends delivered, and the viceroys and nobles and the governors and the sovereign counselors gathered together, seeing these men on whose bodies the fire had no power, and the hair of their head was not singed, nor were their garments changed, nor did the smell of fire come on them. And Nebuchadnezzar responded and said, "Blessed be the Elohim of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his messenger and delivered his servants who trusted in him, and changed the sovereign's order, and gave up their bodies, that they should not serve nor do obeisance to any Elah except their own Elah. Therefore I make a decree that whoever of any people, nation, or language who speaks any wrong against the Elohim of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, his limbs shall be taken, and his house made a dunghill, because there is no other Elohim who is able to deliver like this." And in Psalm 34:7 it reads, "The messenger of Yahweh encamps all around those who fear him and rescues them. Oh, taste and see that Yahweh is good. Blessed is the man that takes refuge in him. Fear Yahweh, you his set apart ones, for there is no lack to them who fear him." And verse 30, "Then the sovereign promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babel." In Philippians 2:8-11, "And having been found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, death even of a stake. Elohim therefore has highly exalted him and given him the name which is above every name, that at the name of Yahweh every knee should bow, of those in heaven and of those on earth and of those under the earth." That's who we bow to, Yahusha HaMashiach. "And every tongue should confess that Yahusha HaMashiach is master, to the esteem of Elohim, the Father." Now, verse 30 is cross-referenced to verse 10 of Revelation chapter 5, when it reads, "And made us sovereigns and priests to our Elohim, and we shall reign upon the earth." I want Revelation chapter 5 and Revelation 4, for those that went through Revelation with me, they know that those are Libby chapters. Now I'd like, if you will, let me point out a few things that I gleaned from those chapters. You can maybe track with it, maybe you will not. I'm just sharing. In verse 8 it says, "And when he took the scroll, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each holding a harp and golden bowls filled with incense, which are the prayers of the set apart ones. And they sang a renewed song, saying, You are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, because you were slain and have redeemed us to Elohim by your blood out of every tribe and tongue and people and nation, and made us sovereigns and priests to our Elohim, and we shall reign upon the earth." This is the song of the redeemed. This is the song of the redeemed souls. The ones that are singing, who are the ones singing?
The souls.
Redeemed.
The redeemed.
Okay. And so it says the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each holding a harp and golden bowls filled with incense, which are the prayers of the set apart ones. And,
So
and they sang, right?
yeah, the set apart ones you're saying.
It said, and they sang. And so the set apart
The
ones are
elders.
referring back to the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So they sang a renewed song saying, you are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals because you were slain and you have redeemed us to Elohim by your blood out of, now we're getting more definition of who the 4 living creatures and 24 elders are. You have redeemed us to Elohim by your blood out of every tribe, tongue, people, and nation. These are the redeemed, and made us sovereigns and priests to our Elohim. We shall reign upon the earth. So just track with me here because I think this is important. You're not going to hear this from any other place. I've never heard this before. This is something when I was studying Revelation that Yahuwah connected some dots for me. So what you see in this diagram are the wilderness encampments when they came out of Israel. This was the formation, okay? The 12 tribes around the dwelling place in the center of is the tabernacle dwelling place. And the immediate circle in by the dwelling place were the Levites and the Aaronic priest, Moses and the priest, okay? We've all been familiar with that? Pretty much?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do what?
This is so cool.
Okay, well, good. Okay, so now with that encampment picture in mind, I did another graphic to bring it on home. All right, and I'm going to take you to Revelation 4. All right, it said, and the first living creature was like a lion, and the second living creature like a calf, and the third living creature had a face like a man, and the fourth living creature was like a flying eagle. And the 4 living creatures, each having 6 wings, were covered with eyes around and within. And they do not cease day or night, saying, set apart, set apart, set apart, Yahweh El Shaddai, who was and who is coming. And when the living creatures give esteem and respect and thanks to him who sits on the throne, who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before him who sits on the throne and bow before him who lives forever and ever. And they cast their crowns before the throne, saying, okay, so the first creature was like a lion. In the wilderness encampments, each of the tribes had a banner, okay? The banner, and out of the 12 tribes, there were 4 lead banners. Judah had the lead banner of the lion. So when they would break camp and move out, Judah with the lead banner would head out, and following Judah would be Issachar and Zebulun. So the lion, okay? And then the second living creature like a calf, that's the ox, that's Ephraim. And Ephraim had 2 other tribes behind him. And the third living creature had a face like a man, that's Reuben. Reuben had the lead banner of the man and had 2 tribes behind him. And the fourth living creature was like a flying eagle, and that was Dan. Dan was a flying eagle with a serpent in its claws. Dan's banner has changed like 4 times. That was the hardest one for me to confirm, that Dan could be represented by an eagle. Okay, they have 6 wings. The reason why the living creatures have 6 wings is because there's 3 tribes per quadrant. And you don't see the banners of the other tribes behind them because they are not the lead banner. So that's why you see the living creature. When we are born again, is that in 2 Corinthians 5:17, you have become a new creature. All things have become new. So these living creatures represent the redeemed souls. And when Moses was told to make everything exactly like he saw in the heavenlies, that is what I believe he did. So it says, and the 4 living creatures each have 6 wings, were covered with eyes around and within. So from a bird's eye view, that would look like this. Now, this particular wilderness encampment is in the shape of a cross. It's kind of a neat idea, but I don't believe it's correct. I believe the formation was 4 squared because that is how it is described later on in Revelation. However, I like this diagram for the very reason, from an elevated view, looking down on the encampments of the wilderness encampment and looking down at all the multiple faces, all you would actually see are eyes. So that's why these wings look like they are covered with eyes, because they represent the souls. Now, here again, you know, this is delving into that category of some double-minded topics from the corporate group. I understand that. I'm not trying to step on anyone's toes, but it's my understanding based on scripture, especially John 11, that our bodies most certainly stay in the grave, but our redeemed souls that are clean, absent from the body, and are present with him, because Yahusha has already opened the door. In Revelation 4:1, it talks about a door that has been opened. Before that time, no one could be in the presence of the throne room. But once Yahusha opened that door, he led captivity captive. He not only ascended, but he had descended as well. So with that in mind, and if you'll just track with me on that the redeemed souls are in his presence, but souls need a body, and the living creatures are, if you will, like the seraphim that keeps these redeemed souls awaiting their glorified bodies. And this is how that they can be in the presence. This is how they can move and be in the presence of Yahweh. He is omnipresent. This is a very lively and mobile grouping, if you will. So that is just some possibilities. There's so much more to be said on that, but this is just a snapshot of how, when we were reading in Psalm 91, how he shelters us with his wings, and he covers us with his feathers. So this is a possibility that I just wanted to share. It's something Yahweh showed me in my studies, and it made perfect sense to me. So I just wanted to share that. And in closing, Daniel 3, the worship of the image of Nebuchadnezzar parallels the worship of the image to the beast in Revelation 13. We clearly showed that, and we even brought in some of the beasts that we will see in Daniel chapter 7. Secondly, now is the time to develop our relationship with Elohim before the testing time comes. And thirdly, music will be used to bring people to a point of emotional worship devoid of reason. And that is taking place left and right. And we have often talked about music. We often have talked about frequencies. And we just, this evening talked about the 5G frequencies, and no telling what can be done with all of that. So having a head knowledge and not a heart knowledge of the Elohim of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are two different things. Even demons know who Yahweh is, but to submit one's life to him and walk with Yahusha as one Savior is to truly know and belong to the one true living Elohim. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah walked in sober and spiritual mindedness and did not waver into double-mindedness nor carnal mindedness, even unto possible death.